Deltarune is an indie RPG split into multiple chapters, with the first one being released on October 31st, 2018, and the future one still being in development as of this video. Oh mother, where do I begin? Deltarune spoilers, you know the deal. I got into Deltarune during the release of Chapter 2 in 2021 and was sold on the game pretty quickly. The game is built heavily off of the developer's previous game, Undertale, which I did play before getting into Deltarune, but only started fully appreciating that game recently. Undertale was already pretty solid, and Deltarune takes a lot of things from Undertale and expands upon them, such as the battle system and also the graphics. Compared to Deltarune, the fight system in Undertale feels like a first draft. Acting is way more fleshed out, there are unique team members, and the tension point mechanic for using spells is neat. Did you know? Undertale was actually going to have a magic system early in development, and maybe it would have been like this. Deltarune looks really nice, the kind of 8-bit graphics in Undertale were pretty solid, and I feel like this game improves a lot in terms of the colors. Also, the lighting is pretty solid and does a good job at adding depth without overcomplicating things. One of the greatest parts of this game is the cast of characters, so many friends to meet. The dialogue really helps them stand out and makes them feel interesting to talk to. The main trio of characters are pretty solid and are all already gaming legends. The writing as a whole is pretty solid. I like just walking around the worlds in this game and interacting with stuff. All the text feels interesting, and it's fun finding different things to interact with on repeat playthroughs. To celebrate the fact that it's been over a year since Chapters 3 plus 4 dropped, and the fact that Azrael will most certainly return in Chapter 5, I thought it would be fun to look back at the chapters in Deltarune we currently have and give my opinions on them. Chapter 1. Before talking about this chapter, I just want to talk about how there isn't really a title screen to this game. Like, when you boot up the game after playing the chapters, you're greeted with this chapter select screen, and when you begin on a completely fresh account, you are prompted asking if you want to start from chapter 1. I wonder if the game will get a title screen, considering just how weird the vibe is. Like the music and the presentation, especially the presentation of chapter 1's file select screen. This doesn't feel like a game, it feels like a program, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I think it shows how the game wants to be unexpected from the get-go. Chapter 1 begins with us creating a character. I don't like how the game is asking me all these personal questions. It's kind of creepy, and also I wonder how honest the game is being with how it feels about my answers. Like, I told the game my name was Deltarune and it just ran with it. The game then clues the player into an important theme of the game by telling us that the creation made doesn't matter, and we start playing as a character named Chris. The location of the game, hometown, is pretty nice. I'll talk about it more at the end of this chapter. But in terms of education, the students probably get a great education. Then we meet Susie, who seems to have some slight issues, as when we go to get some chalk for the class, she crashes out. The adventure begins when we go to this closet and fall into the first dark world. I like the creepy, unnerving, no, unsettling atmosphere the world takes on upon entering this place. The designs Chris and Susie get for this world also look cool. After getting into a bit of fight with some shadowy masked man, we meet Ralse, the geek, or I guess nerd of this game. He acts as a good foil to Susie, just constantly trying to be nice, which I think works well. The whole vibe of the chapter, once things get going, feels pretty laid back, and because Susie isn't with the main group for a good bit of the chapter, it helps give a spotlight to Ralse while he is trying to explain and communicate how the world works to us, the player, and Chris. Lancer is introduced fairly quickly and is pretty funny. His interactions with Susie throughout the chapter are gold and genuinely help carry the whole chapter, such as this scene where he puts on some disguise to trick Ralse and Chris. It kind of reminds me of the movie Mystery Team, low-key. Susie is a good character in this chapter. A lot of people say that she turns from evil to kind way too quickly. While I do agree that the transition is a little quick, I think it actually does make sense, in large part due to her relationship with Lancer, but making an actual friend is important to her. And because she learns to appreciate him, it feels believable that she would warm up to the idea of accepting the others. Like I mentioned earlier, I think the battle system in this game is good due to the bullet dodging mechanic. All the enemies really get to show their personality through these fights, with all the unique acts and their attack patterns. One thing I will say is that I think not having a progression or leveling up system does hurt the battle system. Like, I'm not necessarily just talking about attacking. I think it could have been interesting if by sparing more enemies you could unlock new spells or something like that. In later chapters, you are incentivized to go into battles, to spare enemies to recruit them to the castle town, which is unlocked in chapter 2, but I still think more reasons to willingly battle would have been nice. The locations in this area are pleasant. The empty space contrasts well with a lot of these areas, such as the chessboard and the purple fields. The chessboard in particular is one of my favorites, mainly due to the music and these weird enemies. They give off a super unique vibe. Also, side note, I don't know if anyone else has mentioned this before, but isn't it strange how when you enter the door for the first time, you can see the name of this audio track, but then the game doesn't do that again for any of the chapters we currently have. All the random NPCs throughout this chapter are cool and really help the world feel interesting, such as these puzzle guys and this cat thing. All the dialogue in this chapter is great, and when I was replaying the chapter for this video, I just kept quoting the lines before they would appear, although that probably speaks more towards my unemployment. The card castle at the end of this chapter is honestly nothing special, I think mainly due to how visually boring it is. I feel like things lean into simplicity a bit too much here, and the lack of colors doesn't help. There are a lot of great things about Card Castle. Some of the rooms are pretty neat, including Lancer's room with all these sound effects. Wait, did Toby just copy Super Mario Land 2? Well, at least he hasn't copied anything from other Nintendo games. In the card castle we meet Rules Card, fixed spelling later, and he is okay. I'm not really sure who these puzzles he gives the player are supposed to be difficult for, maybe Melee Marth players. His shop theme is incredible though, but if you play this game that goes without saying. He also makes us refight a mini boss from earlier in the chapter, and while in previous playthroughs I thought it was a surprisingly weak part in comparison to the rest of the chapter, I actually don't mind it and kind of like it. It is a little lame that isn't at least a reskin or that it doesn't have new attacks, I think. But the fight goes by fairly quickly, and I like how it shows that Susie has warmed up to the idea of acting to the point where she's bringing ideas to the table. Like, the entire act in this one is just Susie's idea. Before I talk about the final boss of this chapter, there is one secret boss in this chapter, Shovel. I love everything about this fight. The music is solid, the background is super different, and helps this fight stand out a lot. All the attacks are super fun to dodge. The dialogue throughout is super interesting, and I get why there is still a fan base for him. Okay, now on to the final boss. Side note, I love how Lancer doesn't have a walk animation, so in cutscenes he just moves like this. So funny, I think it works. King, the final boss, is a truly great character. While there have been some troublesome characters throughout this chapter, they were mostly low-level delinquents, not causing much harm. But as soon as you meet this guy and see his face in the text box, you know he is truly a chud. I really like this fight for a lot of reasons. One, you just have to trust that acting will work out here, kind of like the tutorial fight in Undertale. And also because of how the fight box moves during the attacks, it makes everything feel grander. The music in this battle is incredible, as for most of the music in this chapter. After King is defeated and we say goodbye to everyone, Rouse reveals his true form. Both of these designs are great, and I can see why people refer the old design to the new one in later chapters, especially chapter 4. Rouse is super expressive, and I'm not sure if the old design would have been able to capture that emotion as well. Returning from the Dark World, we can talk to people in Hometown, and I like how many of the residents have a lot to say. I also think it is impressive how well the new people blend in with the Undertale cast. Stan's always up to his classic shenanigans, although we unfortunately don't get to talk to Papyrus. You know how there are 3 main characters that are blue, pink, which is close to red, and green? Well, Sans is blue and Papyrus is red, so it'd be interesting if there was like a third skeleton brother who was green. Pretty cool idea, I know. The chapter ends with this creepy cutscene, like, yeah, sure, Deltarune is for kids. While this chapter is not perfect, I think it is a great introduction to the game. All the characters get good moments to shine. The bosses such as the King and Shovel fights were great, and chatting with the NPCs and enemies or people in Hometown led to many laughs for me.
I could be in chapter 2.
Chapter 2. This chapter is super fun. I love the theme of having everything take place inside of a computer. I feel like the devs really pushed the idea to its fullest. All the characters during this chapter are great, and so many new ones get introduced. This chapter starts similar to chapter 1. We go to the class of boredom.
What if all the Smash 4 characters all went to school together? And how would they interact with each other?
Then you go to the closet with the castle town. This door doesn't even seem that secret, like what if the janitor or whatever finds this place? I really like how the castle town gets upgraded from chapter 1. It's neat how all the characters get to return, and there are even activities to do like fighting enemies for rewards. It's pretty dope. Heading into the new dark world of this chapter, we are introduced to the new antagonist, Queen. She's one of my favorite characters in the whole game. All of her dialogue is pretty funny. Her design is great. I love how expressive the dialogue portraits she has are, and I think it is really interesting how she seems to care about the laners. Like, obviously her relationship with Noelle is great, but even her connections with other characters are interesting, like the scene where she just wants to play this game with Chris. I'll talk about the other characters now. Ridley's annoying, but like, at least he likes retro games, and even references Smash Bros. Man, that is a great game. Glad to see his obscure gem is getting referenced. Well, I think he's a character so annoying that it is funny. I can understand people think he's too annoying, and yeah, I can understand why people just wish they could remove him from the game. Look at this stupid chud laugh he does. Susie's still a pretty great character. I don't feel like she changes that much from the end of chapter 1, which is fine, considering she gets more character development in chapters 3 and 4. She has pretty good interactions with other characters throughout the chapter, like Rouse, Lancer, and even Noelle with the Ferris wheel scene.
Alphys posted a picture. Dinner with the girlfriend. Wait, I thought Alphys was a girl.
Happy Pride Month. I don't have too much to say about Rouse. Most of the new characters don't really seem to care about him, and the acid boat scene is dope. Will you choose the I will be nice to Rouse dialogue option, or the I will be mean to Rouse option? Because that's basically every interaction between him and Chris in this game in a nutshell. Noelle might be the most interesting character in the chapter. I've seen other people point out how compared to the other party members she seems afraid, and I think that is a really interesting way to show how she can trust with the others. Like, even if you select the attack button for her, she becomes terrified. I will talk about Snowgirl / Weird Rat after I talk about chapter 4, so don't worry. Another great thing about Noelle in this chapter is that because she has a history with Chris, it allows her interactions to feel unique, and also feels like a good natural opportunity to incorporate world building and also give context to events in the game leading up to this. And Chris, well, Chris is just Chris. The battle system in this chapter is really good. There are tons of new fun additions. The ability for Susan and Rouse to be able to do their own individual acts really helps elevate the combat system and allows for more dynamic decisions to be made during fights. Circling back to my point from chapter 1, while there is an incentive to actually fight enemies now with the recruit system. I still feel like a progression system could have been good. Like maybe Susie and Rase start out by not being able to act as effectively as Chris, but through more fights and practice they could become better. Having Noelle join the party is nice. It's cool how she has unique spells. The enemies in this chapter are great. The pool of creatures to fight feels diverse and they are spread out well throughout the chapter. I love how all the enemies are themed around computers and all their attacks are great and feel like they improve from the already pretty solid chapter 1 attacks. The locations in this chapter are great. Cyberfield is a good introduction to the chapter. The Radiohead people are cool. The variety in NPCs not only in this section but throughout the rest of the chapter is fantastic. A couple of them can be a little bit too quirky in my opinion, but the rest are pretty funny and help add more character to the world. The gameplay in between fights is also better than chapter 1 in my opinion because the dodging sections just feel a tad more interesting. Also the teacup rides are fun. Cyber City is another great location, especially visually. Like all the signs look super nice and help add more to the visuals while not making things feel cluttered. The introduction of Noelle as a party member is fun here as mentioned before. I know I still haven't talked about the music in this chapter yet, but I don't have too much to say other than I think it's great, and the city theme is one of my personal favorites. The pacing of this chapter in general is just great. Like in this chapter we go from the potassium scene, which is one of my brother's favorite parts of the whole game, to the first Spamton fight. It's just one gem after another with this chapter. Seriously though, I do feel like the pacing is superb. Tons of great moments throughout, and the chapter is a good length. Okay, let's talk about Spamton now. He's pretty strange and is a great secret boss, even if I unfortunately struggle to take it seriously due to how mean it has become. The shoot 'em up gameplay is done well here. The attacks are pretty challenging, and I love the final attack with all the little TV icons in the corner or whatever you would call them. The fight is great, but what stands out to me the most is how you get to it. Interacting with Spamton in his shop is a completely different atmosphere than anything else in the game, and going through this strange and creepy dungeon makes things all the more interesting, but specifically the fact that Chris is at the forefront of this whole thing, being separated from the others, is the best part to me. The final area of this chapter, Queen's Mansion, is once again pretty solid. I like the unique rooms each character gets at the start. It's a fun way to show more personality of each character. Wait, why does Caddy get her own room? She's not a friend we've seen in this Dark World. The only major problem with this area is that Ralsei is given this fire fit and then goes back to his normal fit instantly, like L game design. Also in this mansion we find out about Burley's backstory, and he self-reports that he's basically just a former gifted child who is good at spelling words. Get a life, son. The rest of this area is great. I love these swashling enemies, and I think people with color blindness will too. The final fight of this chapter against Queen is great. The music is good. The atmosphere with the fountain in the distance is top notch. The attacks are pretty solid, such as the floating head one that reminds me of Mega Man X2. I think it's cool how this fight parallels with the Spamton Neo boss. If you are acting, you are constantly trying to get rid of wires holding someone up. The mech punch out boss is also neat and helps solidify how stronger in terms of quality the final bosses are in this chapter in comparison to the first in my opinion. Also before we exit this Dark World, it is crazy how Burley was immediately about to create another Dark Fountain. Like all I'm gonna say is that I've never seen him and the Knight together in the same room. After the Dark World is done, it's fun how we can revisit the castle town and see all the new Chapter 2 people. It's also fun revisiting hometown, getting to talk with different NPCs in comparison to Chapter 1 is fun, such as this blue, red, and green trio. Also, this line from Mouse Score is a gem. The chapter's ending does a good job of heightening up the stakes, and it leaves a lot of questions in the air. Chapter 2 is peak, and honestly, besides a few small nitpicks, I love everything about it, and I feel like it improved a lot from Chapter 1. Good thing the wait for the next few chapters didn't take that long.
Is that a gubby?
Chapter 3. The chapter where we see the TV glow. Chapter 3 is a pretty solid chapter. Not as good as Chapter 2, but I think it's really fun. One of my favorite parts of this chapter is the aesthetic. I think the game show vibe is nailed really well, not just on the actual stage, but also in the green world and TV world areas. Like the little audience members you walk by. These little touches really sell the whole chapter. There are a decent amount of characters in this chapter. Hey, Rules Card is even here. Welcome back, bro. The star of the show is Tenna, just an absolute gem of a character. All his connections to the characters are interesting. His sister with Chris leads to some great interactions where Tenna will just say something really stupid and insensitive to Chris. His shots with Ralsei and Susie at the end are nice, and also work as good opportunities to develop both characters. When Ralsei was talking to Tenna, I think he was just being genuinely honest with how he felt. Because apart from Susie and Chris, if you make them nice to him, most characters just ignore Ralsei and would forget about him. Susie is another good character in this chapter. She's always optimistic and helpful from the beginning of the chapter to even the end, like she's already talking to the Knight mid-fight. It's a good contrast to characters like Ralsei and Tenna who just accept their fate. Because this Dark World is so personalized to Chris, it gives us a good window into their life and also their family history, like Tenna talking about Azrael. There's even this computer simulation of their room, which also includes the blood stain from them ripping their heart out. Thanks for paying attention to all the details, Tenna. At least I assume you made this area. Getting into the actual gameplay, now we have board 1. I don't really find this board all that interesting, to be honest. I mean, there are good elements here, but they are also on the second board and done better, such as the quiz sections and the dialogue from Tenna, Susie, and Ralsei. The dialogue is honestly insanely impressive. Just the way it accounts for so many different scenarios and choices the player makes, it helps the whole game show vibe feel organic. But talking about board 1 itself, I just don't feel like much interesting is going on. The music feels pretty generic, and there is only one enemy here to fight, apart from the La Nina and El Nina mini-boss. There's a good video that talks about the issue of the enemy variety in general, with this chapter from the channel Willow. I think that's how you pronounce it. And yeah, the enemies that are here are good, but there isn't a lot of them. And even then, I feel like the chapter could have done a little better when mixing up the variety of the enemies. Like this Shutta enemy is pretty interesting, but I only fought them like twice in my playthrough. And that's how many the game requires to recruit them. No shade to the water cooler though, that enemy is dope. Another issue I have with this board is the Pippin's NPC, because they have interesting dialogue in the second board and throughout the rest of the chapter, but here it just feels too explanatory. Also, it is really lazy, all the Pippins look exactly the same. Like, what is this, Paper Mario Sticker Star? Oh no, I just compared my second favorite game of all time to complete garbage. Deltarune, get your act together. Like seriously, even some changes to their designs, like this one Pippins who wears sunglasses, would have gone a long way, because I do think they have good dialogue. At least there are these fun quizzes you can partake in. Fun game, Lighteners and Darkener. What do they know? Do they know things? Let's find out. The battle system in this chapter isn't changed from chapter 2, which is disappointing because I think maybe learning some new spells or something could have been fun, as mentioned previously. But on the boards you get graded for how well you do on the board, and that includes the fights. I think this does a good job of encouraging the player to play optimally and try to rat out the quickest way to win, as there are more stakes involved. For my playthrough of the first board, I tried to do as horribly as possible because I knew if you did bad enough you would get a Z rank and thus get a unique room, which is neat. Trying to do poorly in the fights was fun because it required not only that you take a lot of damage, but that you also manage the TP level. So yeah, in a stupid way, playing bad made me appreciate the gameplay more. The La Nina and El Nina mini-boss is a highlight of this board because they are great characters. Of this board though, they are great characters throughout this chapter, and the fact that they break a mid-fight while Tena tries desperately to keep things professional definitely helps this battle stand out. Board 1 is fine, but I just don't really care for it. The cooking minigame is really fun, and the rest of the minigames in this chapter are also great. I love the amount of effort put into all of these. Even the tutorial screens feel special. After board 1, we head into the green room. I didn't know that Gasser had his own room. Here we meet the character Ram, who has his own shop named Ram. Apart from it feeling like a missed opportunity that there wasn't a shop screen here, I think Ram is a decent character. A lot of his dialogue just feels like him trying to make as many references as possible, so basically the average Deltarune fan. Also, his role in the S-rank boards is pretty interesting, but I'm not going to talk about the S-rank minigame until I talk about the weird rap, because it just has a forbidden aura, you know? The green room is great, interacting with the other cast members is fun, and it's cool seeing it change in between boards. The design of the room and the music is also great. The colors throughout this chapter definitely pop. Board 2 is definitely a massive improvement over the first board, and the only real issue I have with it is that it looks visually similar to the first board, with even Rouse commenting about this in-game. It just kind of leads to the boards not standing out too much in my mind, when gameplay-wise there are a lot of differences. The music in this board is super nice, the taking pictures ability is super fun and leads to things feeling less boring, and the raft acts as a good way to allow for more exploration. I like this line from Tena, yeah, this is where you're supposed to go, because it's a good way of showing him that he is trying to keep the crew in line and not find the secret area left from the Manta minigame while trying to pretend to be helpful. Or maybe I'm just reading too much into this. The scene where Susie changes the controller ports for everyone is great and takes advantage of the weird playing a game inside a game scenario perfectly. Just leads to some good interactions between the characters. The ending with Rules card and the weather duo is funny and was a good way to end the board. The singing minigame is fun. I don't have too much to say about the minigame itself, but how it is introduced is special. Tena talks about the 12th month of the year here. That's pretty cool. Maybe you could get her to come back and watch. Haha, just kidding. I don't get why Tena likes to bully Chris so much. Honestly, maybe he had what happened at the end of the chapter coming. The optional monster movie minigame is great, and my personal favorite of the minigames. The dialogue from Tena and the gameplay are top notch, although I wish you could just play outside this one specific time frame in between board 2 and the board where Tena takes control. After this board, the fun gang discovers that Tena has kidnapped Toriel, which I think is a great way to increase the stakes, because it shows not only the fact that Tena is willing to be corrupt to achieve his goal, but also the idea of a dark world being dangerous. Like, Toriel's asleep, she doesn't even know she's here. The final board Tena makes us play on works as a good way to show us that Tena has gone over the line, and I think it is creative how the game makes the player be resilient to overcome Tena's control, and in the end we are able to turn the TV off. TV World is a great location. It's good to have a return to the more traditional labyrinth gameplay we have seen in the earlier chapters. I think it is paced really well, as were the earlier board game sections, and overall I would say the length of the chapter is good, as while it isn't super long, there are tons of good aspects crammed in, like all the green room sections and the secret S-rank boards. Getting back to the TV World, the music is incredible, the design is good, the aforementioned crowds are nice, as are the posters and little TV gifts throughout. All the fun obstacles and whatnot in addition to the battles are great, such as the one where Ralsei becomes some sort of horseman. The The quiz sections and parts where you have to sneak past security are also fun. I love how the TV area kind of transitions into more of this, for lack of a better term, backrooms area. There's even this part where we have to save these shadow guys from this office space. So many creative sections throughout this area. The rules card boss fight is great and is honestly the only reason I would defend him being in this chapter. All the different attacks with the shadow guys are great. This laser pointer attack is a gem, and the way the fight system gets changed for this fight helps it stand out. Nearly a 10 out of 10 fight, honestly. I like how before we return to the green room, we get to this area that gives off the aura of the very first part of the chapter 1 Dark World. It's a good way of symbolizing how bad things are getting for Tenna. The final time we see the green room is great, and we unfortunately discover that Ram has turned to stone. No one will shed a tear for him. This dude's probably stoned already. Why does this one Pippin have beef with Ram? This feels uncalled for. The battle against Tenna is amazing. I like the unique axe Susie and Rouse can use here. The attacks Tenna does are well designed. The WarioWare style minigames are also great. I'm sure that's the first time anyone has made that comparison. It's a great way to use the old minigames from the chapter and also the new context the player gets placed under, for all of them are fun. All in all, a really great boss. I know this is random, but I really like the sound effect that plays as he introduces a fight. I'm literally crying. Bro can't take anything seriously. Life is just a cartoon to him. Knowing what we know now, even though Tenna was problematic at times, he was still an incredible host, and it's so painful that he has to go out like this. Well, I mean, until you can save him in chapter 4. The introduction of the Roaring Knight is incredible and is also an incredible way to end the chapter. All of their attacks command respect as they are incredibly powerful and well designed. This is easily the most difficult boss fight in the game as of chapter 4, as not only are most of the attacks near instant kills, they are also incredibly difficult to dodge, which makes this boss a fun optional challenge. I was even able to defeat it without the Shadow Mantle from Nestering boards, just to ignore the 3 revivements I used, and that is pretty cool. This transition after the last attack is incredible and shows how much aura this fight has. This fight has so many great details, like how if you lose, the knight will move a little before the death screen. Easily my favorite boss in the whole game. It is a little weird how Chris's attacks do so little damage, like even Rouse is putting up more of a fight. It's almost like Chris is in cahoots with the knights.
Are you being intentionally dense?
The ending of this chapter is incredibly strong, and while the chapter has issues such as the first board being a bit boring and not having many enemies, I still think it is really good. Also, it gave us Tenna, so this chapter is still a gem.
There's more fun in store! If you open the door! I get close to the door! I open the door!
Chapter 4. Right off the bat, I feel like the thing that stands out to me the most about this chapter is how much content there is. It is by far the longest chapter in the game. There's so much going on, even in Hometown. The save points let you know that things are serious and that there's a lot in store. The church scene at the beginning is nice. It shows us another part of Hometown, which is cool and helps build up the world. The 25% red juice and 75% yellow juice joke is pretty funny. I'll give the game that. I also think the church being the location for the Dark World is great, but I'll talk more about that when I get to it. Susie and Chris have great interactions in this chapter. It's cool to see how they have really gone from foes to friends. I'm sure their friendship will make it to the end of the game. The rest of Hometown is fun, the music is good, and it's fun talking to all the characters. These do not really care about Pete's appearance in this game all that much, but on this playthrough I've really grown to like him. Returning to the Castle Town is great because of how many characters there are. It's interesting seeing characters from completely different Dark Worlds interact. On my very first playthrough I missed Wonder Tree in Chapter 2, which I initially thought was whatever, but on this playthrough I made sure to save everyone, and after hearing this gem music I realized that that is unacceptable. All the new rooms for Queen and Tenna, who's kinda homeless, are great expansions. Even Rouse gets the room. I think Chapter 4 does a good job of showing how Rouse treats himself poorly, which is expanded upon the Dark Worlds. This trashing room does a good job at communicating that as well. The section where we go to the holiday house is great. Exploring the house is fun, and all the decorations make the location really pop. The character interactions here are great, like when Chris messes with Noelle's computer, even though we didn't ask them to. It's a good subtle way of communicating their friendship, and the game has tons of good small moments like this. After the soul gets separated from Chris is when the section really gets good. Exploring the vents to get to all the rooms feels like a really genius way to fully utilize the house. If you go to the kitchen, you can see Chris scrolling Twitter or whatever, but don't get caught. If you return to the kitchen later, you can hear Chris playing songs on the piano, and this is legitimately one of my favorite parts in the whole game. One, because there are a great variety of songs that they can play, but also because the piano acts as symbolism for free will, because you can play whatever song you want. Chris hasn't been able to do that, which is something the game has been calling attention to, such as if you interact with this piano at the hospital. The rest of the moments as the soul in the holiday house are great, like when we interact with this breaker. Yeah, it seems like there aren't any strange switches that don't belong with the others. After we return to this not suspicious looking room, we have to try and get the guitar while Chris tries to stop us. No one sees you have good interactions in this chapter. Like if you wait long enough during the breaker section, they start watching Angry Video Game Nerd. Like this is the chapter of gems. After Susie discovers the guitar, she asks Noelle if she can play it. I mean, it's not like there's anyone else around to play it. The introduction of Carol is great. The song used here makes the ambiance really scary in a way, unlike any other moment in the game up to this point. And now we finally enter the first Dark World. On one hand, the amount of content before even entering this place feels a bit intimidating, but on the other hand, it is a good way to change up the format from the first two chapters, which had the hometown and Dark World, Castletown sections at the end of the chapter. Overall, I would say I really enjoyed the sections before the Dark World, especially the Holiday House and Castletown sections. Heading into the first Dark World, and yeah, the situation is crazy. The church went from being at peace just a little bit ago to now being the forefront of another adventure. The Dark Worlds in this chapter are my favorite visually in the whole game. When I talked about chapter 4 in my favorite games from Trunk 25 video, I talked about how good the lighting was, and yeah, it cannot be understated how impressive the effects are here. I love the way the prophecies look. A lot of the screens in this first Dark World use darkness super well, like these scenes where you have to rely on the effect made from your footsteps to proceed through the maze. The backgrounds here also look super nice. I love the windows, and also I know I've been saying this the whole time, but once again the music here is superb. The creatures fought here are incredibly unique compared to the rest of the game. The attacks are fun to dodge and they go along with the theme of the Dark World super well. We meet the character Gerson Boom here, who is one of my favorite characters in the whole game. An incredible bit of trivia is that his name is based on a Smash 64 tournament match that took 52 minutes to play. You might think that it was a very high level match, but in reality it just took too long because the Kirby was just camping on the platform at the top and Pikachu couldn't get to him safely. I would still rather play this in Brawlhalla. Hey, maybe the fact that the match took too long is the reason that Gerson moves so slowly when we first meet him. Gerson is a great character because his aura is just above everything. He sells all the monsters in the fights, doesn't care about the prophecy, and when he sees all the books he chooses the green book compared to the other red and blue ones. His interactions with Susie are also really good, and he acts as a good counter to Rouse, who when trying to take care of the prophecy himself undermines Susie's efforts to help, while Gerson tries to be more supportive. The secret boss against Gerson is also really great. Starting with how we find it, we have to backtrack to old areas in the Dark World, and then those areas are filled with darkness, like representing how we have to brace the darkness so we want to get stronger, or something like that. The fight itself is cool, the music is flames, the background and how it changes is tough, and all the attacks, whether it be in the regular or Undyne style, are great. The library part of the Dark World is a nice change of pace. I like this one bit of flavor text if you interact with the back of this bookcase. Like, they really thought about everything making this game. This section ends with a mini boss against Jackenstein, and the gameplay here is really engaging. I love the, for lack of a better term, backroom style areas. All the different scenarios are varied and pretty funny. Like, I had quite a chuckle during this boss. The second to last area of the Dark World where you climb in these challenge rooms is really fun. The whole climbing mechanic in general is done really well, and I love that in later parts of the chapter there are sections where you climb up towers and they have this effect where the background rotates and makes things 3D. Don't get me wrong, earlier chapters did really cool things visually, such as the arena and Jovel's fight and Tenna in general, but I feel like chapter 4 goes above and beyond. Also, shoutouts to these Cupton NPCs, they are pretty neat, and I also like the other NPCs in this chapter. After we leave the first Dark World, we go back to the church, and there's an optional scene where Susie talks about how she had an experience where she was bullied for playing the piano. The chapter does a really good job of using the piano as a tool to build character for Chris, as there was a scene in the Dark World where they ignore her control and play the piano. But this moment with Susie is also a good contrast, because if Chris wasn't good at / didn't know how to play the piano, then these scenes where they play the piano in this chapter might not hit as hard, because we only care that they are good at playing the piano, not that they are able to enjoy playing it, like how the others in the universe feed Susie. Heading into the second Dark World. Wait, I almost forgot to mention this Chris sprite. Heading into the second Dark World, not only are the colors different, but just about everything is different, from the NPCs that are statues to the platforms we walk on. It's an effective way of finding variety while also keeping in line with the aesthetic of the previous Dark World. The fight against the Gerson statue is done really well. The sound combined with how quick the attacks are at the end legitimately kept me on my toes and was kind of frightening. Right after is a great scene where Susie confronts Rouse after he acts strange. The lighting during this part is really what sells it for me. The lighting during important moments is a good touch. I know this might sound stupid, but I saw this meme before replaying the chapter for this video, and it kind of makes me appreciate the scene more. When the lightning strikes, Chris just gets engulfed by the darkness as if they aren't even there. Like, Chris could just be removed from this scene and the interaction between Rouse and Susie would go the same way, but they are here, and that is important because it just makes you wonder what they are thinking. The third and final Dark World is superb. The colors and lighting are on point. I really like the smoggy effect. There are even some interesting prophecies here. They will see the tail of hell take crawl. Well, whatever this is, it definitely doesn't sound like a friend, I'll tell you that. The build up into finally confronting the knight is great. I'm crying, bro. Rouse is trying to aura farm here so much. And then we finally get to talk to the Roaring Knights. It seems they have something in store for us. A Titan, eh? Super. In order to win, we'll need to focus, okay? This final fight is a gem, bro. The music is metal as hell, the design of the Titan is crazy, and the attacks aren't holding anything back. And of course, the goat returns to help us. The visuals when we meet the Titan are incredible too. Like, if this is what we are doing in chapter chapter 4, then what fun will the future chapters have in store? Finally, we end with this scene where Susie learns about the final prophecy. Everything about the scene is so simple yet so perfect. The music is strange and everything is on this narrow blue path, which only emphasizes the mystery of the moment. You talk to Rouse, you really feel the hopelessness of the situation. Hearing the song play when you seal the fountain was like the cherry on top of this gem chapter, after not hearing in chapter 3, or the entirety of chapter 4 up to this point. After the Asgore and Sans fight gets confirmed for chapter 5, we end on a really strong cliffhanger. Okay, I'm almost done talking about this chapter because there are the Mike minigames and boss fights. Apart from the placement of this section being weird, I really like it. The controls for the boss are interesting and the Mike trio are great characters. If you have a Switch 2, you get unique minigames, so just another reason why Switch 2 is incredible. The chapter is massive, but all of the content is great, and it is my favorite chapter in the game as of this video's release. Time to talk about the weird route. So the weird route is very interesting. When I talked about the genocide route in my previous top 10 games 2025 video, I said that didn't matter because it was optional. But the very fact that it is optional is what makes it interesting. Everything about the game has changed because of the context that choosing to kill enemies can have a genuine impact, regardless if you do it or not. And the weird route in Deltarune is the same way, but in my opinion, it is executed better, at least in the 4 chapters we have now. When you defeat enemies in Deltarune, the game doesn't go into doomsday mode like in Undertale. Really the only difference is that enemies after chapter 1 you defeat by fighting don't get recruited, and every chapter has a scene where the enemies will be mad at or won't want to help you. Also, if you don't recruit people in chapter 3 after Tenna dies, he can't be repaired and becomes lost media. The way you enter the weird route in Deltarune is super interesting, not starting until around the halfway mark of chapter 2, when you meet Noelle. Most players playing Deltarune, I assume, will be acting and trying to resolve conflict with peace, as that is what is heavily encouraged by the game. So the option to freeze enemies to death is something players might not even consider unless they have knowledge of this route. And also, to do the route, you need to backtrack and fight previous enemies, which is something Noelle comments on. This is a good subtle way of hinting at the idea that there might be something more than how things appear on the surface when starting the route. Usually you don't go left in games, but in Deltarune plenty of secrets can be found if you do, such as the original Starwalker. As you proceed through the weird route in chapter 2, it feels like the game stops smiling. NPCs disappear from the map, the music changes to become slower, later on enemies start to run away from you. The way enemies turn to ice and stay frozen after battle is genuinely a great decision because it really leaves an impact and feels like we are destroying the world. Noelle functions like the AI ice climber following the control of the player ice climber in Smash Bros, forced to listen to the control of someone else being controlled. She gets ignored and brainwashed to the point where when she first sees Burley, she doesn't even fully realize that it's him at first. Speaking of Burley, hey dude, this is just a joke, right? I don't like this. Burley, wake up! Like bro, why can't we just be happy controlling Chris? So much greed trying to control everyone. Bamton's role in the weird route is also good. He's willing to take whatever chance to get out of a situation to the point where he's okay with hurting someone. It feels really natural and a great way to use his character. Susie and Rouse don't really have too much to say and are more so just going along with everything. In chapter 3 there's an optional dialogue option where you can tell Rouse you plan to go to the festival with Noelle and he will respond differently on the weird route, which implies he knows something. If he knows what happens in the chapter 4 weird route, because when Susie asks him if he knows anything about Noelle later in the chapter, he gives the same answer on the regular playthrough. I mean, he might not know because the weird route scene takes place in the light world, so I guess that makes sense. He's definitely at least a little aware of the player's control over Chris, and it makes me wonder if there, I don't know, could be a point where we fight him or something, but maybe not because he took notes on what happened to Burley, so he's probably trying to devise a plan to stop weird route without having it get to a battle. While nothing you do in chapter 3 impacts the weird route, there is the mantle minigame, which I will talk about now, because, well, it's not exactly a game for kids. The connection between the mantle boards and the regular boards is great. In board 2, you can use the raft to sneak onto the secret area, which leads to a door in the mantle version of the board before Tenna stops that from happening. Tenna offers us freedom to go wherever we want with the raft, but if there's something he doesn't want, it won't happen. Someone being unwillingly controlled, sounds familiar. Mantle board 1 is fun and doesn't seem all that weird at first. I mean, we are just killing enemies inside a game. Board 2 is where the fun begins, though. We find the mantle game version of Noelle and use her to fight the enemies. The puzzles here are really fun. The final board is also great. Before we get to the board, we have to talk to Ram one last time. Excuse me, sir? Why does Ram want us to play this creepy game, and why is it so accurate to the weird route in chapter 2 and other parts of Chris's life? I'm going to make a guess and say that this comes from Chris's mind, like a nightmare intrusive thought, considering that they made the Dark World. So maybe this game represents the evil dialogue options that they don't like, but we can force them to choose anyway. The fights before we get to the big boss at the end of board 3 are legitimately really challenging and well designed. The fight against E-Ram is a gem. All the attacks are really cool. I I like this Bomberman style attack, and this one that kind of reminds me of Void and Kirby Star Allies. Feels like a perfect attack to dodge. In the final phase, we have to damage it while it's doing this attack. Was a great way to end the fight. And a friend is here, so yeah, 6 out of 6 fight. Chapter 4 Weird Route is amazing. After having fun in Chapter 3, we have to stop dodging and talk to Noelle. The entity of the soul is super interesting. The way it manages to have control over Chris even when it is away from them is horrifying. Like when it uses Noelle asking a question as a chance to teleport across the room via the dialogue box. The way it functions must be impossible for them to comprehend, but they have to accept its control. Obviously, it's difficult to fully appreciate the Weird Route considering there are 3 chapters left in the game to go, and so we don't fully understand Chris's motivations and the plot yet, but we have enough of a picture to understand that even though we act horribly, Chris must need the soul if they are willing to keep it after we give Noelle a thorn ring in the light world. And Noelle's point of view during the Weird Route is the most interesting part in my opinion. She does not know, or at least is unaware, that Chris is being controlled, and the idea of them being controlled is probably so far-fetched that wouldn't have even crossed her mind. Like the fact that she is already impacted by the events of Chapter 2, but then we double down and inflict more trauma, making it so she is fully brainwashed under our control without her even knowing about the soul. The lighting in the scene where Noelle equips the thorn ring is incredible, and it is impressive how well the game consistently uses the lighting to impact the tone so well. Every scene involving Noelle after the one at the holiday house, such as the ending, is horrifying and is legitimately a great cliffhanger to the Weird Route in future chapters. The fact that Chris doesn't get a break after this and has to go through the rest of the Dark World, including an optional scene where we can make them think about Noelle, is interesting because they just have to pretend that everything is okay but are forced to deal with how problematic we are. There's a prophecy that seemingly acknowledges the thorn ring later in Chapter 4. Maybe the Weird Route might be the intended way, considering Rouse says that everything in the prophecy comes to pass, yet the Weird Route is completely hidden. But it's not like he's trying to get us to be evil or anything. He's constantly encouraging us to be nice and spare people. Wait a minute, he does split up in Chris. Where is the Weird Route starts? What if he tricks Susie into getting them away from Chris? The Weird Route as a whole is great and much better than Genocide routes so far because things are not as tedious to the point of being boring like an Undertale. Why is the Weird Route so good? Well, imagine a burger. I'm so hyped for the Chapter 5 Weird Route, and I feel like there's so much potential for this to be a super gem. Deltarune is one of my favorite games of all time. Everything in the first 4 chapters has been building into something so special and interesting. The characters are phenomenal, the graphics make incredible use of pixel art, they really feel like high definition 2D. The music, bosses, gameplay, worlds, everything here is giving it 100%, and I genuinely feel like there are few issues with the game. I feel like the combat could be potentially expanded upon in future chapters because even though the game doesn't want you to fight, it still has it as an option. So I don't think fleshing it out a little would be horrible, because while acting feels really intricate, attacking just feels extremely basic in comparison. I love all the memes about this game, so many gems. The main characters are incredibly well written, and how they have changed throughout the chapters is great. I would highly recommend this game, but also Undertale because it's recommended you play that first, and also Mother 3 because Toby took heavy inspiration from it. I haven't played Earthbound yet, so I don't know about that game. The Dark Worlds might have been digital, but the connections were real. Thanks for watching, and remember, Deltarune tomorrow.